them that international military evacuations have ended. Much more on that ahead. Evening, everyone. Welcome to The Next Revolution. I'm Steve Hilton, and this is the home of positive populism. Pro-worker, pro-family, pro-community, and especially pro-America. Of course, first tonight, the latest on Hurricane Ida. Let's go now to Mike Tobin in New Orleans. Mike?
Well, Steve, it seems that as far as the intensity of the storm goes in New Orleans, this last hour has been about the greatest intensity that we have seen, both in terms of the wind gusts that move up Canal Street here and the volume of water. Sheets and sheets of rain are moving through. The unfortunate thing now with the sundown I can't do is pan the camera around and give you a look at much of what has happened, in large part because power is out for all of New Orleans now due to what has been described as catastrophic damage to the transmission system. What that means, frankly, we're going to have to wait for the storm to pass for morning to come around and get the details on what that means in terms of the catastrophic damage. But we know that whenever there's a storm like this, the ground gets soft, the trees get toppled by the winds, and they take the power lines out with them. Hundreds of thousands of people without power now. In terms of damage, we know that in St. Bernard County, actually, let me back up, here in New Orleans, we know that one house has collapsed. And according to a tweet from the New Orleans Fire Department, an adult male was trapped inside of that house. As far as St. Bernard County and the barges, 22 barges got loose. They're getting blown around the river. We know in the town of Lafitte, one of the barges hit a bridge there, or at least a barge hit a bridge there. And officials are warning people to stay away from that bridge because there's no way for them to check the structural integrity of the bridge while the storm is still here. In terms of the storm itself, well, we've certainly seen a lot of wind damage around here, but it is about due east of New Orleans right now, according to the radar. So we've got the eastern edge of the eye wall as it's coming through, and that's why we've got this much intensity of the storm. I would ballpark the wind gusts that are coming through New Orleans at upwards of 80 miles an hour in terms of what we've experienced. But the key issue, I think, here now is that the levee system that has been fortified since Hurricane Katrina, those are being tested. The officials out here express a lot of confidence with the design and with the investment into the levee system. They feel safe about that. The problem is all of this water that's coming in. New Orleans is below sea level. When the water comes in, the water stays. They rely on a pump system to get the water out. The problem is the pumps are simply being overwhelmed by the volume of water that is coming in. They can handle a little less than an inch in an hour. What was predicted to come in was better than 3 inches an hour, and we certainly are seeing volume, a great deal of water coming in, Steve. And again, this really seems to be about the peak of the intensity in terms of wind and water, what we're experiencing right now. And I can tell you, as the wind gusts are picking up right now, it's a little bit like being sandblasted. The raindrops are broken up into tiny little particles, and they just sting the side of your face. Steve?
Well, thank you, Mike. Thanks for your reporting all day on this. We appreciate that. We'll be bringing you updates on Ida throughout the hour. And in fact, later on, we have the governor of Louisiana who can give us an update, especially on that situation with the levees. Incredibly important. Meanwhile, today, Biden showed up at Fema for a pointless photo opportunity. Seemed a little bit grumpy. Have a look.
President, on Afghanistan.
I'm not going to answer Afghanistan now.
Can you give me still an risk as the Air Force, sir?
Well, he doesn't want to talk about Afghanistan, but we do. 2 weeks ago, on August the 14th, Marine Nicole G. texted her sister from Kabul airport. Don't be scared. There's a lot in the news lately, but there's a lot of Marines and soldiers going to provide security. We've been training for this evacuation, and it's actually happening. So I'm excited for it. Hopefully it's successful and safe. I love you. Well, it wasn't successful. It was a disaster. And it was the very opposite of safe for that brave Marine. She came back from Kabul today in a casket. Biden was there. He saw it. Saw what he'd done. Good. Maybe now he'll stop those offensive little speeches telling us what great progress he's making with his historic airlift. Here's how the mother of one of the other murdered Marines put it. Biden is a feckless, dementia-ridden piece of crap. It would have been hard to imagine last Sunday that the pathetic, pitiful man in the White House could have fallen any lower, but fall he did, to new depths of weakness, incompetence, and cruelty. Last Sunday, hours before we came on air, Biden said he was looking at extending his August 31st deadline for removing all US troops from Afghanistan. But on Tuesday, he was wheeled out to say that actually no, he wouldn't move the deadline. What changed between Sunday and Tuesday? On Monday, Biden sent his CIA director, William Burns, to Kabul to negotiate with the Taliban. It wasn't much of a negotiation. They said no. Sorry, we're not extending your deadline. It's our deadline now, so you'd better get out. And Biden just rolled over and accepted it, despite the chaos, despite pleas from Britain, France, Germany, everyone, despite the fact that he knew it would mean leaving countless Americans and our allies stranded behind enemy lines. On Wednesday, when he was asked about that, Biden just laughed and made a joke about it, a joke. And then came Thursday, the deadliest day for our military in a decade, 13 of them murdered. Scores of Afghans murdered, their blood flowing into the sewer where they had desperately gathered, the sewer where Biden's reputation now belongs. Of course, the terrorists were responsible, but Biden must be held accountable. Those people died because of Biden, and everyone knows it. Biden knows it. He knew it when he finally faced the cameras later that day, a broken, defeated man. This image, the defining image of a collapsing presidency. And unbelievably, even after the carnage, he gave the terrorists another victory. Instead of fighting back, Biden actually exploited the deaths of our fallen heroes to say, see, this proves I'm right. It's chaos. We've got to run away. But it's chaos because you're running away, you feeble idiot. And then Friday, as if Biden thinks we're the idiots, he orders up a random drone strike to try and look tough. If the guy we took out really was the planner of the attack, why the hell didn't Biden take him out before he killed 13 Americans? Now he thinks if he can just make it through to Tuesday and get all the troops out, we'll move on. They announced on Thursday, after weeks of telling us there's no way they could put a number on how many Americans are left in Afghanistan, they can now magically say there are 1,500, and 500 of those had already left. Today they're saying it's down to 300. And we know perfectly well that any minute they're going to announce that all those Americans are out. Do they really think we're going to fall for this? They don't know there were only 1,500 Americans left. They just picked a number they knew they could evacuate. For all they know, there are 15,000 or more. The New York Times last week reported that even after the press conference, when BLINKEN announced the 1,500 number, State Department officials confirmed it could be thousands more. Thousands more Americans. This isn't even counting our Afghan allies, which veterans groups this week estimated at 250,000. Hundreds and thousands of people turned into sitting ducks for torture, terror, or worse by Biden. And all because he wanted his mission accomplished moment. He wanted to be the one to stop the endless war. Well, he didn't even establish a mission, let alone accomplish one. He didn't stop the endless war. He just restarted it. Everyone agrees that what he's done has increased the threat of terrorism and decreased our ability to fight it. His own regime raised the domestic threat level here as a direct result of what Biden did there. He keeps blaming Trump and the deal he made with the Taliban, but Trump's deal had conditions attached, and one of them was for the Taliban to work with the Afghan government, which they obviously didn't do. There was no reason to stick to that deal. The Taliban broke it. You think Trump would have stood for that? There was no reason to take all the troops out. Trump left enough to protect our anti-terror operations. There was no reason to leave Bagram Air Base. Trump said just last week his plan was to keep it. Everyone told Biden what a disaster that would be, but Biden did it anyway. Now he says the military told him Bagram wasn't worth keeping. That is a flat-out lie. With the resources Biden gave them, they had to choose between guarding Bagram and the embassy, and Biden knew that. Even as he was doing it, he was pressed on the consequences. He pulled out of Bagram in the middle of the night on July the 1st. On July the 2nd, at the White House, he was touting economic news, but reporters kept asking him about Bagram. Here's what he said. I want to talk about happy things, man. Oh, you just want to talk about happy things? What is this? Story time at the kids' library? You ran for president, not Santa Claus. No wonder Biden's entire regime is falling apart. You've got Blinken giving out a kill list to the Taliban. You've got the Defense Department boasting about building 50,000 housing units practically overnight to provide accommodation for at-risk Afghans, while we've got 37,000 of our own veterans homeless on the streets of America. You've got the head of CENTCOM burbling on about how impressive the Taliban are, and some other general tweeting about Women's Equality Day in the middle of all this. No wonder there's now a crisis of morale inside our military. No wonder this brave Marine commander risked his career and his pension to raise the alarm.
I want to say this very strongly. I have been fighting for 17 years. I am willing to throw it all away to say to my senior leaders, I demand accountability.
Of course, instead of the accountability he rightly called for, he was the one that was fired. Instead of the ex-arms dealer masquerading as defense secretary, why is he still in his job? Why is the swamp lobbyist filling in time before his next corporate gig still our Secretary of State? And why is that vain, narcissistic blob, General Milley, the man who told every passing journalist writing a book that he, Milley, a general, might just have to step in and save democracy from the threat of Donald Trump, the duly elected president? This truly appalling man, Milley, who thinks it's his job to divide the country with his woke musings instead of defending the country with force and conviction. Why on earth is this man still chairman of the Joint Chiefs? But above all, why is Biden still in the White House after this entirely avoidable catastrophe that has killed our Marines, stranded thousands of Americans behind enemy lines, created a new safe haven for terrorists to plan attacks on America, alienated our allies, and brought shame and humiliation to the presidency and this country? To quote his words, Mr. President, and no, you do not deserve the honor of that title, but as a proud American, as someone who respects the Constitution, I will use it, even for you, even now. Mr. President, for what you've done to those families, to this country, to our standing and authority in the world, we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay peacefully with every political and legal means at our disposal. Tell us what you think at Steve Hilton X and at NextRevFNC, and share this message when we post it. Now we've got Sarah Carter joining us, Morgan Ortegas. Sarah, this latest news tonight that they've just announced, they just sent out messages that the evacuations are over. If you're there, that's it, you've had it. I mean, what are you hearing on the ground? What do you make of the latest news?
Oh gosh, Steve, it's horrific. I've sent a video over to your team. I know we can't play it tonight because there's a lot of details on that video, but it is an American family. I can't tell you how many Americans are going to be left behind. They were trapped at a Taliban checkpoint. They were trying to get through the checkpoint that this White House said people would be able to get through to get to the airport for evacuation. They had guns pointed at their faces. They were told that they were not allowed to pass through. They have small children. They went ahead and they even videotaped themselves as a record of proof in case something happens to them. That record of proof went to Congressman Mike Garcia's office. Mike Garcia's office, of course, the people there have been working diligently along with Senator Tom Cotton's office and others like Michael Waltz to get people out, people like Morgan Ortegas who have been involved in what we call the digital Dunkirk to rescue people. I can't tell you how many people are being left behind. Steve, it's terrifying. I've been on the phone with people all day, as I'm sure Morgan has, and they don't know what to do. The Taliban has full control of the city. I expect that the airport will be run over sometime within the next 18 hours when the last of the planes fly out and we abandon our Americans and our civilians. And this was all because of President Biden and the ineptitude of his administration.
Exactly. And let's remember, it's not just those people in Kabul. It's all around the country. I mean, this situation, and, you know, they think this is all over by Tuesday when everyone comes out. I mean, it's just starting. Morgan, can I ask you about just to follow on from what Sarah was saying there about the responsibility for all this? Biden, you know, all week, he's been saying, well, there's nothing I could do. This was Trump's fault because he handed me this deal, I couldn't change it. I mean, you were part of that process there with Mike Pompeo. It's just simply not true what he's saying, that this was the only way he could possibly have responded. Could you just lay that out for us and knock back this argument with all the authority you have as actually having been there when it was done?
Well, thank you for letting me correct the record on that. And also thank you to Sarah. You know, people like Sarah and I are just civilians now who've been trying to help American citizens and people who are eligible to be civs to get them out of harm's way into safety. And I have to say, in this moment, when our leadership at every level has failed us, the American people have risen and they have stood up and they have done the right thing despite failed leadership. And so that's where I have confidence. But I'm so glad, Steve, that you asked me this question because we keep hearing the left saying, well, President Trump negotiated with the Taliban as well. That is completely the opposite of what Mike Pompeo and his team negotiated. There was a lot of things in our negotiation, but first of all, how do you do a successful negotiation? Well, you walk in from the position of strength. So when Mike Pompeo and his team walked into the room, they were backed up by a president who had released the mother of all bombs, which is, you know, the description for the bomb that's basically right underneath a nuclear weapon in terms of its capacity. So they had done that under President Trump's watch, right? So that's number one. Number two, whenever Pompeo came into the room, the Taliban knew that he was a part of the team that took the head off of Qasem Soleimani, who was the head of the IRGC Quds Force, aka basically the world's biggest terrorist. And so he walked in from a position of strength, and he said to them multiple times, you touch one American and then it's your head. I'm paraphrasing, but also not really. So when it comes to the negotiation, there was a lot of things that were provisions, two main ones. One, of course, is that they would have to break with al-Qaeda and that they would have to prove it. Another one was not that the Taliban would militarily take over the country. The negotiation that we set forth said that the Taliban had to come to the negotiating table with the government of Afghanistan, with women, with civil society. There had to be a political reconciliation. And of course, we did not see that. The Biden administration, when we handed the negotiations off to them, they were unable to get to that political reconciliation. So to pretend that President Biden and Tony Blinken and his team had the same deal going on that President Trump and Mike Pompeo had going on is a lie. It was a totally different negotiation.
Exactly right. And by the way, there's another unbelievable aspect to this that I'm going to be talking to General Bolduc about later on, because we've just heard this, just been reported in the Washington Post, that they were offered by the Taliban the opportunity for us to control Kabul, not just the airport, but all of Kabul. And we said, no, you take it. We'll just have the airport. I mean, what unbelievable incompetence. Sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm so